Hello, everybody. Want to talk today about what may be one of the most abused scriptures in the Bible. It is probably the one that I hear the most taken out of context, misapplied, used to justify things that shouldn't. And it's just bad what I see people do with this. And that's Luke chapter 19, verses 45 and 46. As soon as I start reading it, I'm sure you will know it because it's also one of the most famous passages. This is Jesus cleansing the temple. And he entered, and by the way, I'm reading out of the ESV. And he entered the temple and began to drive out those who sold, saying to them, "It is written, my house shall be a house of prayer, but you have made it a den of robbers." I have seen this verse used to, by well meaning people to justify all sorts of actions on uh, on their behalf, to come against and fight against those who would dare profane what we are doing. It is almost always uh, a believer, meaning well in their righteousness, coming against and crusading against those horrible people who don't believe the way I do, or uh, you know, something like that. So I wanted to look at this a little bit. There's a few things going on here that I think need to be addressed. One is the culture of the time. Where is Jesus? What is he doing? Who is he? So if you notice, Jesus is coming into the temple as the Son of Man, the Son of God, God incarnate. The temple is his. It is his Father's. It's where he should be worshipped. He's at the entrance of the temple. My cat's coming up here trying to knock the camera off. He's coming into the temple as the Messiah, the incarnate Son of God, with an authority that we don't have. And as he walks into his temple, he's greeted at the entry area with all of these merchant tables that are selling sacrifices and offerings for those who have traveled from all over to purchase there at the temple and then be able to offer. Because if you're traveling from hundreds of miles away, you're not bringing animals with you to sacrifice. You're not bringing these things because it's just too hard to carry them. So you bring the money and you buy them there. The problem is they're massively marked up. This is Annas' temple, Annas' high priest. There are actually historical documents that talk about how he is known for massively overcharging the people. So the high priest is ripping off the pilgrims, basically. The religious leaders are participating in this and doing wrong to the common person, to those who are coming to worship God. So the religious leaders are who Jesus is attacking, not those horrible pagans, but the ones that are representing God and using their authority and positions of power to abuse the people who would come in gentle worship. So, anytime you have somebody who is using this verse right off the bat as a means of, we're coming against those who would dare attack Jesus, no, or Christians, or that's not who it is or what it's doing. It's going after the religious priests, the abusive religious leaders. Additionally, Jesus is doing it in his authority as Messiah, an authority that we do not have. In fact, we are not told anywhere that we are to go cleanse the temples. There are a couple times where you see, say in Revelation, that people are told to purge the evil within their own group. So for example, in Revelation, when they're told to remove the Jezebel, who was part of their congregation, one of their teachers, and they're keeping up with this. They're not told to go out and crusade against the pagans. They're told to love them, to show them grace and mercy and forgiveness, just as we were when we were heathens and lost. We miss that a lot of times. So Jesus is operating in an authority and a command structure that we do not have and we have not been given. That's important to remember as well. There is also some other things going on here that we also miss just in our light reading. And I want to thank very much this wonderful book. It is a great book. It will help you look a little bit at things culturally that we miss. A lot of things culturally that we miss. One of which is how they understood their scriptures. The Old Testament, what we call the Old Testament, is Jesus' Bible. He loved it, breathed it. Every Saturday, Shabbat, they went to synagogue. They went through the whole entire Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, every year, read the whole thing, read most of the prophets as well. They memorized scripture in a way that we don't today. They sank it into their souls so they knew it. And one of the things that the rabbis did, because they knew scripture so well, and you see this in the, what's the greatest commands? Love thy neighbor, love your Lord your God, and love thy neighbor. There's a passage there, the love part, that repeats itself. Jewish theologians and writers love repeating. That's a very common deal. And so they will look for common connections, the same words, the same phrases, things like that, connecting together. And because they memorized it, they'll just spit this out. It's just part of who they are and what they do because they know the scripture so well. And we see this repeatedly throughout the New Testament when we're looking at stuff and we're going, how are those passages connected? Well, they're connected in the Hebrew by the phraseology and what they're saying. And so they make these connections that we miss. We miss patterns and all sorts of stuff. And this is a great example of it here. So she calls it hinting at the scriptures. And Martin Luther King Jr. actually did it in his speech about I Have a Dream. There's several scriptures that are quoted there but not pointed out. And hopefully you'll recall them. So on the surface, Jesus' words sound quite tepid. But if you know his references, you'll see that Jesus' rebuke of the money changers was packed with far more punch. He contrasts 2 famous prophecies about the temple. The first is from Isaiah's glorious vision of universal worship in chapter 56. And he says, there I will bring to my holy mountain and make them joyful at my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and their sacrifices will be accepted on my altar, for my house shall be called a house of prayer. Hey, there's the first part of that. It says that my house shall be called a house of prayer, where the whole world, the entire world, comes to worship. The second part of it actually comes from Jeremiah chapter 7, and it reads, starting in verse 9, will you steal, murder, commit adultery, swear falsely, make offerings to Baal, and go after other gods that you have not known, and then come and stand before me in this house, which is called by my name, and say, we are delivered, only to go on doing all these abominations? Has this house, which is called by my name, become a den of robbers in your eyes? Behold, I myself have seen it, declares the Lord. Go now to my place that was in Shiloh, where I made my name dwell at first, and see what I did to it because of the evil of my people. So the phrase the den of robbers is, hey, you guys are not worshiping in truth. You're ripping off the people. What happened in Shiloh, where the center of worship used to be? Well, it was destroyed. They went off into idolatry and worshiping other gods, and God destroyed it. So if God is willing to destroy the place where his people worshiped, is he willing to do it again? And that's what Jesus is saying here. He's telling them this is supposed to be a place that the whole world can come together and worship. And instead of that, you have turned it into a place that resembles anything but. And he's actually telling them, I destroyed Shiloh. I will come and I will destroy this place because you have profaned it. That's a huge threat. And it's something that they would not have missed. Us, we don't know our Old Testament. We don't know our prophets. We don't know these things. And it would just go right over our head. But they absolutely would have caught that meaning. Jesus is telling them that I, the Son of Man, am proclaiming judgment against what's happening here, against the high priests, the religious leaders, and the temple itself, because you've turned it from what it's supposed to be into something entirely different. That's an authority, again, that Jesus doesn't have. The closest thing that we might have is if we came into an actual church congregation, not out on the street to the unsaved, but we saw a church congregation that was wrong, and Jesus, God gave us a conviction to speak up in correction. What you're doing here in this church is wrong. What you're doing here to other people is wrong, and you need to fix it, or else God's going to do something. And you only do that if God tells you to, or you end up sounding like my daughter here. Yeah. So we don't want to do that. So, all that to say, this verse is a powerful one that lets you know that Jesus has authority as Messiah, that we don't. He's coming against the religious leaders, he's coming against the abuse, and he's warning them that this place is not safe like they think it is, and that judgment can come and that temple can be destroyed. And if we look back at history, we know 40 years later, AD 70, it's leveled and destroyed, just like he was letting them know. That's something that Jesus can do. Um, please don't abuse that verse. Don't let it justify your mean, angry, hateful, or just judgmental actions against the unsaved. That's not what it's for. It's Jesus showing his authority as the Son of God to proclaim judgment and warning that we don't have. So I hope you found this interesting. Just a short little note. Let me know. Love to hear your comments below. Thank you so incredibly much. God bless.